Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday morning, 11 o'clock Central Time. That means it's time for Brown Bag Lunch. I am Dr. John Sherk, here to help you with your service business in a number of ways, but especially as relates to exit and talent management. I want to do something a little different with you today. I'm going to specifically help you think about exiting. And this is something you should be thinking about at every phase of the business. I had conversations often with people who are at the front end of starting a business, and they don't have an exit plan. They're like, "Well, I'll think about that later." But if you want to begin with the end in mind, and you want to maximize value, and you want to get to where you can have enough money in the bank to not work before you're 65 years old, then you really should be thinking about exit as soon as possible. Okay, even if you don't know which method by which you want to exit, you should be thinking about what are the methods and what do I want to be working toward. Okay, so I'm going to just talk with you about several types of exits and help you think about what are the options. And again, if you hear something that you really want to talk more about, make an appointment. Let's get on the phone. We're on a Zoom call, and we'll just talk it through, and I'll help you get oriented. The first type of exit, which is the most stereotypical, the most traditional, is where you just sell the business outright. Somebody comes in, there's a third-party buyer, they offer you a number, you accept that number, you work out the terms, but essentially what's happening is you're walking away. Okay. Now that sometimes involves staying a little bit for an earnout, meaning you get some of your money at year one, and the next 2 years, let's say, you get the rest of it at the end of each year as the business continues to perform. Okay. Now this is a great option if you have an attractive company, in other words, a company somebody wants to buy, and it currently really operates well without you there, or without you giving it day-to-day management. Okay. If you're still the day-to-day manager of the company, I recommend putting in someone first. Otherwise, if they buy, you're gonna be stuck there a long time, but no longer as the owner. Okay. So first one is selling outright. The second one is what's called recapitalization. When you recap a company, what you're doing, or recap yourself, really, what you're doing is selling a chunk of the equity in your business to balance out your investment portfolio. So let's say you have a very successful business, but all your money is in the business, right? And let's say the business is worth $10 million. So you may want to sell anywhere from 20% to as much as 80% of that business to somebody else, put that money into other kinds of investments, real estate, stock market, bond, whatever makes sense to you in your context, so that all of the risk of your net worth is not tied to your business. Okay. You can do a minority or a majority recap, but the point in doing that is to begin to diversify your investment. Okay. And by the way, when you do this, the point of the recap is to diversify your investment, but you want to stay there and run the business for quite a while longer. Okay. So this is the kind of thing you consider if you say, I'd like to tap out some of the equity, but I don't want to retire anytime soon. And I can assure you, a buyer who wants to come in that scenario only wants to do this if you're saying to them, I want to be here another 10 years. Okay. We'll talk about retirement later. I'm just trying to recap this company. Okay. Now, number 3 is liquidation. And this is a fire sale. This is what it sounds like. Just for your own understanding of terminology, if you said, look, I own some trucks, I own an office building, I own a few assets, and we came together and said, somebody from the real estate side, let's say, did a valuation of what are the market value of all of your hard assets. Let's say they all add up to $300,000. Let's just say. In a liquidation sale, your business is selling for $300,000. In the language of these kind of transactions, if your business is worth more than the value of the hard assets, that part of the value is called goodwill, right? So if your business has goodwill, then someone's also buying the enterprise, not just the assets. And so If your business doesn't have sufficient goodwill or attractiveness for someone else to buy, and you want to kind of move on with your life, then you're looking at a liquidation sale. And the reason this might be a fit is your company is distressed or unprofitable, or maybe you just have an irresistible opportunity pulling you towards something better. Now, having worked through this kind of issue with many clients over the years, this sometimes gets triggered because of a life event, and it isn't really how they want to sell the company, but they don't have any choice. And this is one of the reasons why to prepare for your exit before it's time. Because should there be a health crisis, who knows what. But if you need to spend a year away from your business and your business will die without you there for a year, not away, every minute of every day, but realistically, if you're not there to operate it day after day, if it will die, then you don't have any choice. So this is something to really be thinking about before that day comes so that you're ready. Okay, number 4 is installing someone to be the president or the chief operating officer or the person who is the day-to-day operator of your business. Okay, now you could do this anyway and have nothing to do with equity. Okay, and I would say if you're intending to sell your business, you and I should talk, because this is extremely important if you don't have this person in place already. If you have someone in mind, great. If you have no one in mind, this needs to happen for you to have any goodwill, right? I mean, unless you're intending to stay there another 10 years, like I said earlier. So putting someone in place who signs contracts, who is the directly responsible person, so that essentially you can change yourself out. You could change yourself out for a different owner, and the business could continue identically as it does. That's what we're really talking about here. Now, there's 2 versions of this. There's one where you kind of stay involved day to day. You still are going to the office. You're still on the payroll of the company. And there's another version where you get a little bit even more distant. You're no longer on the payroll. You're only the owner. We'd call you maybe the chairman of the board at that point. But whichever one of those you selected, someone else is running the business. Now, what if you say, well, I'd like to see them be involved with some equity? No problem. We would set up what would normally be thought of as a stock option, is a stock option in this case. It's where, let's say at the beginning, your business is worth $1 million. And 20% of that would then be worth $200,000. When you bring in somebody, you say, look, you're going to grow this thing to where it's worth $10 million, right? But because of the option to buy, a stock option, when it's worth $10 million, 20% would then be worth $2 million, but they can buy it at the old price. So if they meet their goal of making it worth $10 million, they can then acquire $2 million for $200,000. Okay, that's the kind of deal that you'd want to set up if you want to involve equity in that, and it would position them potentially to buy the rest of it or to bring in other partners at that point, because there's more equity to move around. So that'd be number 4. Number 5. Number 6 is transferring it to family. I do quite a bit of this as well. This is where you're not selling the business in a normal arm's length transaction. If you are selling it in a normal arm's length transaction, and it just happens to be a family member, then I think of this as the first one where you're exiting, right? These relationships can make the process super rich and rewarding, but also complicated, because when that ownership transfers from you to another person in your family, if you're not getting market value for it, this set of assumptions starts to kick in which things you would have to clean up on your balance sheet, for example. In order to sell this company to a third party, you begin to think of those cleanups as Junior's job, because he's already getting this thing for free or for less than market price. So, some of those things can be his job to clean up. It's sort of like if you're selling a house to a third party, you're going to have to clean up and fix up a few things. If you're passing it down to your children, it's more like doing it as is, right? But the problem is those as-is dynamics can trigger the failure of Junior in the operation of the company. So that's where, if you're transitioning to family, it can be very rewarding to do it. You can get a much more powerful sense of legacy when you do it, but you should be prepared to spend many years doing it. And my normal coaching is when you have, especially the number one person who's going to operate that company, you should position them to be doing everything that involves operating the company for at least 1 year successfully before there's any announcement of any change of ownership or leadership, right? So that there's not even a blip and there's a complete continuity from the business side. And then lastly, number 7 is a management buyout. Now, this is where it's time to retire, and you look at the people who have, built the company with you, and they want to buy the company from you. And normally what this means is if they're the managers, a bank will often listen to them to take on some debt in the acquisition of the company, but also very often the owner is, in a sense, compromising cash today in order to be able to pass it on to the managers. And here's what this looks like. Let's say your company is worth 8 times earnings. Normally, valuations are done on net profit times a set of times a multiplier. Okay, so the managers want to buy it from you, and at 8 times earnings, they're going to want to pay for it over, let's say, 5 years. Now, what money are they using to pay off that over the next 5 years? It's profit from the company, right? So what that means to you, practically speaking, is you're willing to allow what would be your profit anyway, sir. I mean, this would be your profit anyway, but because you want to sell it to your managers, and because they're now, taking on the risk of the business, they owe it to you. If they crash the business, they're not going to be able to complete the transaction. You're going to get this company back, but you're be willing to say, yes, you can use profit over the next 5 years as part of what you have to pay me to own this business. Right? And if they grow successfully, they can, without a ton of money out of their own pockets or from the bank, acquire ownership in the business. And then, you'll need some help to set up the structure of the ownership and how that all works. But it could work that way. Okay. So there's your 7 options, right? Selling outright, a recapitalization, liquidation, bringing in someone day to day in which you stay in there day to day, bringing someone in day to day in which you are not there day to day, transferring it to family, or a management buyout. 7 different options. Now, what I encourage you to do is think about that stuff. Google a little bit of it. And if you want to get on the phone with me and kind of talk through, does one of these make more sense to me than another? I'll be happy to do it. First calls, they don't charge anything for the first call. Just we're networking, we'll get to know each other, and maybe we'll even become friends. So, but I encourage you, if you're the owner, think through these issues now, not later. Excuse me. Because if you wait too long, you run the risk of having to liquidate when that wasn't really what you wanted to have. All right, I'm Dr. John Sherk. This has been Brown Bag Lunch. I hope it's been helpful. If you like what you hear here, please share it with your friends and comment below and ring me up. Let's talk and get to know each other. We'll see you next week.